Welcome everyone to our fourth session for this second course on God Summons Europe. We have had three previous webinars in this series, the first two about the tablet to the Pope, the third one, which was just a week ago, about Baha'ullah's summons to kings and rulers in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, and today we will be finishing up the summons in the Kitab-i-Aqdas. This, of course, the second course for God Summons Europe is itself about the fourth or fifth course we have had in this series that stretches back quite a few years, and I hope we will soon make all of those videos available to everyone as both separate, what do you call them, separate playlists for each course, and maybe one master playlist for the entire series. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Shahrokh Monjazeb, our speaker, who is a prolific translator, author, and scholar of Baha'i materials in general. Thank you for joining us, Shahrokh, and I will turn off my camera and microphone and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Robert. Friends, good to be here again, picking up where we left off. If you recall, last webinar, we essentially covered Baha'ullah's proclamation in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, starting with his summons to the kings, the generality of the kings of the earth, then to two European monarchs, namely Franz Joseph Habsburg and then Kaiser Wilhelm I of the newly established unified Germany, and then Baha'u'llah summons to the rulers and presidents of Americas, North and South America. Today, we're going to be looking at the remainder of Baha'u'llah's proclamation in the Kitab-i-Aqdas that were addressed to leaders of religion and other people and places. Addressing the leaders of religion, from the beginning of paragraph 99 through the end of paragraph 105, Baha'u'llah exclusively addresses leaders of religion. And he begins his summons to religious leaders with these words in the original Arabic. He states, قُلْ يَا مَعْشَرَ الْعُلَمَاء لَا تَزِنُوا كِتَابَ اللَّهِ بِمَا عِنْدَكُمْ من القواعد والعلوم إنه لقسطاس الحق بين الخلق. This is a very famous statement by Baha'u'llah, and its translation by the beloved guardian. Say, O leaders of religion, weigh not the book of God with such standards and sciences as are current amongst you, for the book itself is the unerring balance established amongst men. Baha'u'llah then continues, in this most perfect balance, he writes, whatsoever the peoples and kindreds of the earth possess must be weighed, while the measure of its weight should be tested according to its own standard, did ye but know it. The eye of my loving kindness, Baha'u'llah continues, weepeth sore over you. Over who? Over the leaders of religion. Inasmuch as ye have failed to recognize the one upon whom ye have been calling in the daytime and in the night season, at even and at morn. Advance, O people, with snow-white faces and radiant hearts, unto the blessed and crimson spot wherein the Sadratul Muntaha is calling. Verily, there is none other God beside me, the omnipotent protector, the self-subsisting. You may know that Sadratul Muntaha, the divine low tree beyond which there is no passing, that's the translation by Shahrokh Effendi. It really is a unique phenomenon which represents the manifestation of God, which represents Baha'u'llah. He is the tree, this divine low tree So oftentimes the word in the original Arabic is placed in the sentence, and that's the way it should be. I believe there are certain um, words that are not translatable into English because there's no precedent of them, you know, and in the language, in the vocabulary. So using Sadratul Muntaha is very appropriate here, but its interpretation and the translation of it into English has been the divine low tree beyond which there's no passing. So I read the statement again: advance, O people, Baha'u'llah, and again, these are addressed to the leaders of religion, of all religions. So advance, O people, with snow white faces and radiant hearts unto the blessed and crimson spot wherein the Sadratul Muntaha is calling. Verily, there is none other God beside me, the omnipotent protector, the self-subsisting. He then continues, O ye leaders of religion, who is the man amongst you that can rival me in vision or insight? Where is he to be found that dareth to claim to be my equal in utterance or wisdom? Know by my Lord, the all-merciful, all on earth shall pass away, and this is the face of your Lord, the Almighty, the well-beloved. We have decreed, O people, that the highest and last end of all learning be the recognition of him who is the object of all knowledge. And yet behold how ye have allowed your learning to shut you out as by a veil from him who is the dayspring of this light, through whom every hidden thing hath been revealed. Could ye but discover the source whence the splendor of this utterance is diffused, ye would cast away the peoples of the world and all that they possess, and would draw nigh unto this most blessed seat of glory. Say, this verily is the heaven in which the mother book is treasured, could ye but comprehend it. He it is who hath caused the rock to shout and the burning bush to lift up its voice upon the mount rising above the Holy Land and proclaim, the kingdom is God's, the sovereign Lord of all, the all-powerful, the loving. We have not entered any school, nor read any of your dissertations. Incline your ears to the words of this unlettered one, wherewith he summoneth you unto God, the ever abiding. Better is this for you than all the treasures of the earth, could ye but comprehend it. Whoso interpreteth, at the end of his direct proclamation to the leaders of religion, he adds this last statement, which is very profound, very important, and it's very relevant to the leaders of religion, who oftentimes are the interpreters of the word of God, or supposedly they claim that they have the capability to interpret the word of God. Oftentimes, you know, their interpretations are erroneous, or has been throughout history. But here, Baha'u'llah provides a disclaimer, or perhaps a warning. He says, whoso interpreteth what hath been sent down from the heaven of revelation, and altereth its evident meaning, he verily is of them that have perverted the sublime word of God, and is of the lost ones in the lucid book. So Baha'u'llah has claimed time and time again that his message is very explicit and very direct, that his proclamation was unmistakable. So there is nothing to interpret besides its outer meaning. Baha'u'llah does have writings that were mystical in the early days of his revelation, and for good reasons, because he was not allowed to disclose and proclaim his message directly. But in this phase, the final phase of his declaration, which was his proclamatory phase, the phase of his proclamation, which we spoke, that lasted 7 years from 1866, the revelation of the Kitab al-Aqdas in 1873, this was a very explicit, direct enunciation of his mission and proclamation of his mission. So this final statement, whoso interprets what has been sent down from the heaven of revelation and alter its evident meaning, that person is truly of those who have perverted the word of God, and it will be accounted as such in God's holy book, the lucid book. Now, in his public proclamation, the Kitab al-Aqdas, Baha'u'llah also addresses certain specific people and places. In paragraph 89, the paragraph following his summons to the rulers of America, Baha'u'llah addresses the people of Constantinople. It's very interesting that why he singles out Constantinople, or Istanbul, as it's known today, is because it was the metropolis. It had become, first of all, it was the seat of the Eastern Roman Empire at the time of Constantine, and then its fall after the conquest of Islam by Muhammad the Conqueror in the 15th century. Then it became a very important Islamic center. But it is because of the way it's situated, it is the gateway of Asia to Europe, and from Europe to Asia. So it really is a very significant and important place of commerce. And at that time, it was the seat of the Ottoman Empire, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, and one of the largest, perhaps if not the largest, city in the Middle East. And this is where Baha'u'llah resided for 4 months after he was banished from Baghdad, and he came to Constantinople, to Istanbul, but then he was within 4 months was exiled to the city of Edirne on the extremities of the Ottoman domain in Rumelia, which was in Europe, actually, in Europe. So Baha'u'llah did step into Europe, lived in Europe, and also lived in or set foot during his journey to Akka in Africa, in North Africa, in Alexandria, in Egypt, Port Said, and then from there back to the Middle East. So addressing the people of Constantinople, Baha'u'llah, the first 2 sentences addressing the people of Constantinople in the original Arabic, again, there is alliteration here and the rhyme. Baha'u'llah writes, Ya Mahsharul Rum. Rum is referred to Constantinople at that time because it was the Eastern Rome, and it still was known amongst the Arabs as Rum. So Ya Mahsharul Rum, نسمع بينكم صوت البوم أخذكم سكر الهوى أم كنتم من الغافلين. So this first sentence, there is a rhyme. يا معشر الروم نسمع بينكم صوت البوم. So room and boom. Room is Constantinople. Boom is the owl here. That's and then there is a question. أخذكم سكر الهوى أم كنتم من الغافلين. So the official translation is, O peoples of Constantinople, lo, from your midst we hear the baleful hooting of the owl. Hath the drunkenness of passion laid hold upon you? Or is it that ye are sunk in heedlessness? This is a translation that was made by the Baha'i World Center. It is not the Guardian's translation. The Guardian had not translated rather this first two sentences of this address to the peoples of Constantinople. However, the subsequent passage has been translated by the beloved Guardian and was included in his general letter, Promised Days Come. Baha'u'llah continues, O spot that are situate on the shores of the two seas. O spot that art situate on the shores of the two seas. So again, this is a reference to the two seas are the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, because the Bosphorus is the passage, the canal, if you will, or the seaway between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. So, O spot that art situate on the shores of the two seas, the throne of tyranny hath verily been established upon thee, and the flame of hatred hath been kindled within thy bosom, in such wise that the concourse on high and they who circle around the exalted throne have wailed and lamented. Now, this reference, the throne of tyranny hath verily been established. This is a reference to, at that time, Sultan Abdul Aziz was still the Sultan. It was another 4 more years. It was 1887 when he was deposed, I believe, and was committed suicide or was killed. It's not fully known, but there's a good chance that he committed suicide. We talked about that in the previous course when we spoke about the Surah al-Muluk, the Surah of the Kings, which a large sections of it has been addressed to Sultan Abdul Aziz. So here, the reference, the throne of tyranny hath verily been established upon thee, and the flame of hatred hath been kindled within thy bosom, in such wise that the concourse on high and they who circle around the exalted throne have wailed and lamented. At this time, the two famous foreign minister of Sultan Abdul Aziz are dead. Fuad Pasha and Muhammad Amin Ali Pasha. They're both have passed on, but the Sultan still is ruling, but he is becoming ever increasingly more tyrannical, and it's getting to a point that the treasury is completely bankrupt. In 1873, the Ottoman Empire was absolutely bankrupt at that time, and the era of discontent, both within the hierarchy and the ruling class, as well as the people, was rising to its highest level, and eventually leads to the deposition of the Sultan in 1878. 1878. I hope I said that earlier, but it would be 1878 is the correct date, now that I recall. Okay. Baha'u'llah continues, we behold in thee the foolish ruling over the wise, and darkness vaunting itself against the light. Thou art indeed filled with manifest pride, hath thine outward splendor made thee vainglorious? So here, Baha'u'llah is addressing not only the people, but the city itself as the vessel, as the platform on which all these infamies are taking place. And so he says, we behold in thee the foolish ruling over the wise, and darkness vaunting itself against the light. Thou art indeed filled with manifest pride, hath thine outward splendor made thee vainglorious. This is, if you recall, I mentioned that the Sultan Abdul Aziz, it actually had began with his predecessor, his brother, Abdul Majid. They built this colossal palace, the Dulmabachi palace, which is now a museum, that the most extravagant, even Queen Victoria gifted the chandelier in the sort of the front entrance hall of the palace, which is just spectacular. It's one of the probably the biggest chandeliers in the world. Everything about this palace, and yet was so grandiose, but the country was bankrupt, and then the Sultan was spending the money of the treasury frivolously and squandering it, so and there was so much corruption going on. So Baha'u'llah, God is making an observation that the darkness vaunting itself against the light, the forces of darkness, and yet it's going to all collapse soon, and it will. Baha'u'llah continues, by him who is the Lord of mankind, he swears, by him who is the Lord of mankind, it shall soon perish. All of this. And thy daughters and thy widows and all the kindreds that dwell within thee shall lament. Thus informeth thee the all-knowing, the all-wise. And this is the demise of the Ottoman Empire, the demise of Constantinople as being this central city that ruled all of Middle East and the empire. It did, after the First World War, it completely collapsed. So this is an ominous prophecy by Baha'u'llah in 1873 about Constantinople. Now, after addressing the population of Istanbul, Baha'u'llah turns his attention to the Central European River Rhine and the German capital Berlin, and makes a very ominous prophecy with regards to these two locations. Addressing the River Rhine and the city of Berlin, these are two paintings, and there was really no contemporary photograph of 1873 Rhine, but that's 1873 Rhine and 1873 Berlin at the time of this revelation. And it's a short paragraph, but very prophetic, and it's very famous. It's been translated by Shoghi Effendi and included in the Promised Days Come. Baha'u'llah writes, O banks of the Rhine, we have seen you covered with gore, inasmuch as the swords of retribution were drawn against you, and ye shall have another turn. And we hear the lamentations of Berlin, though she be today in conspicuous glory. This prophecy of Baha'u'llah is truly remarkable, truly remarkable. It was eerily fulfilled 7 decades later. Not during the First World War. It was at the end of the Second World War. In fact, when Shoghi Effendi was writing his general letter, Promised Days Come, in 1941, at the height of the German conquest of Europe, it this had not happened. I mean, Berlin was still in its glory at that time, was the capital. But in 1945, as the Germany was was being vanquished and was facing certain defeat, the Allied forces, particularly the Americans and the British, they carpet bombed Berlin basically to oblivion. It was absolutely flattened it. And there are photos, that archival photos, that if you Google it, you will see it. Devastating. And so in 1945, 72 years after the revelation of the passage in the Agdas, during the last days of the Second World War, the world heard in horror the lamentation of Berlin and witnessed the banks of the Rhine River covered with gore. And these were some of the battles of Germany were fought on the River Rhine. And I brought you a photograph here of 1873 Rhine. It was again a painting, and then destruction of one of the bridges by the Allied forces in 1945. This is on the banks of the River Rhine, where there was some of the toughest battles, and the Germans fought very hard against the Allied invasion of their country after, moving into to try to capture Berlin. And so it was quite a horrific battles that took place between the forces, the Allied forces, and the Axis forces, namely Germany at that time. The city of Berlin, this is a photograph or a painting of one of their streets, and one of the beautiful, I believe this is a mall. I think it looks like a photograph, but it could be a kind of a painting. 1873, and then you can see 1945. I mean, Berlin literally was decimated, and and obviously it's been rebuilt and is now the capital of Germany. And it was divided after the Second World War into two parts. The Russian took sections of it, and then the Allied forces. So eventually became East and West Germany. But 25, 30 years ago, it was reunified as when Germany became reunified. Immediately after this, Baha'u'llah addresses and turns his proclamation to the city of his birth and the capital of Iran, Tehran. He addresses Tehran as the land of Ta. Now, the letter Ta in the Persian alphabet, based on the Abjad numerology, it has a numerical value of 9, which is also equivalent to the numerical value of the word Baha. Okay, so and in the Baha'i faith, in Persian, we write Tehran with a Ta. Currently, Tehran is written with the letter Te. So this is some, and oftentimes to not, and in the olden days, it was actually during the Qajar period, it was written with the letter Ta, but it has been changed. And that could have been one of the reasons, perhaps, that they didn't want to comply with the Baha'i scripture as far as notation of Tehran. So it's Tehran's modern spelling is with a te, but in the Baha'i faith, it is Tehran. So you will see capital T with a dot under it in the transliteration, in the convention that is used in the Baha'i faith, and what the Guardian adopted and has used and become the convention by which the Baha'i faith and Baha'i World Center transliterates T. small t or a capital T with a dot under it denotes the letter Ta. Addressing the city of Tehran, this is one of the contemporary buildings during the time of Baha'u'llah, which still is. It's a museum now in Tehran. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful architecture. It's a very famous, and this passage is was originally translated by the Guardian in the Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah, and but it is from the Aqdas. So it reads, Ya Ardata la tahsani min shay qad ja'ala kallaha matla'i farah al-alamin. Ya Ardata, ya O land of Ta, let not grieve thee, O land of Ta, for God hath chosen thee to be the source of joy of all mankind. Baha'u'llah continues, he shall, if it be his will, bless thy throne with one who will rule with justice, who will gather together the flock of God, which the wolves have scattered. Such a ruler will, with joy and gladness, turn his face towards and extend his favors unto the people of Baha. So Baha'u'llah says that if it be God's will, there shall be a ruler, a monarch that will rule, and that will rule with joy and gladness and turn his face towards and extend his favors unto the people of Baha, that would be friendly to the Baha'is. We have not had that ruler yet. There has been no such ruler that had been the way Baha'u'llah describes the none of the Shah, none of the Pahlavi kings, definitely not the Qajar kings, were friendly and offered freedom to the Baha'i faith in Iran. So Iran has never had this ruler, but Baha'u'llah says, if it be God's will, so it has to come. Now, there's something else that he says that is very telling about what will happen in the future for Tehran and Iran, and it comes up in the next paragraph. He is indeed accounted in the sight of God as a jewel among men. He's talking about the ruler. Upon him rest forever the glory of God and the glory of all that dwell in the kingdom of his revelation. This is the last section of that paragraph, the third or the first paragraph of that. There's about 3 paragraphs that in the Kitab Aqdas that are addressed to Tehran. Then Baha'u'llah turns to the city itself, says, rejoice with great joy, for God hath made thee the day spring of his light, inasmuch as within thee was born the manifestation of his glory. Be thou glad for this name that hath been conferred upon thee, a name through which the day star of grace hath shed its splendor, through which both earth and heaven have been illumined. Now, this is a very interesting prophecy. Baha'u'llah says, ere long will the state of affairs within thee be changed, and the reins of power fall into the hands of the people. Verily, thy Lord is the all-knowing. His authority embraceth all things. Rest thou assured in the gracious favor of thy Lord. This statement, by which that ere long, soon, will the state of affairs within thee will change, and the reins of power fall into the hands of the people. Baha'u'llah here is referring to democracy, that Iran will have democracy, that it will be rule of the people, which is democracy, will be established in Iran. Iran has never had true democracy, had always had monarchy and the dictatorial republic. Islamic Republic of Iran is a dictatorial republic. It's really not a democracy at all. It's an authoritarian regime, brutal regime that suppresses any voice of dissent, any opposition, and has crushed innocent people, including the Baha'i community, within itself, within its borders, and is inimical towards anything but its own standards. That is very self-serving and very corrupt. So, with the hope that this statement that democracy will be established, and I think we're moving towards that right now. It will happen, but there will be democracy in Iran soon, according to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah then continues, the eye of his loving kindness shall everlastingly be directed towards thee. The day is approaching when thy agitation will have been transmuted into peace and quiet calm. Thus hath it been decreed in the wondrous book. And after the last place, location, if you will, after Baha'u'llah addresses the city of Tehran, is an ancient Persian region of Khorasan. So immediately after his proclamation to the city of Tehran, Baha'u'llah addresses Khorasan. Now, although today the Persian Khorasan is the name of the northeastern province in Iran, the region was much larger when it was first established circa 520 AD during the pre-Islamic Sasanian dynasty of Iran, which actually Baha'u'llah traces his descent to Yazgerd III. His family goes back to the ancient, of a pure Persian lineage, back to the ancient dynasty of Iran, the Sasanian, the immediate dynasty after the conquest of Islam, of Iran. Now, this is a very large region, which was larger than the current. Khorasan is probably second or third largest province in Iran right now, that region, and it's the northeastern part, the most northeastern province, and its capital is Mashhad, which is also the where the shrine of Imam Reza, the 10th Shia Imam, is buried there. So it is a huge place of pilgrimage within the Shia world as well. So the original region encompassed sections of land that are currently part of Iran, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan. The region from which some of the great Persian poets such as Ferdowsi and Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, was born in Balkh, which is part of Khorasan, in 1207, and then the family had to move to Turkey, current modern Turkey, in Konya, and that's where he's buried. But they were originally from Khorasan, and there are many others that came from that province. Now, within the Baha'i faith, and there's going to be references Baha'u'llah to some heroes of that. Mullah Hussein, the first disciple of the Bab, was from Khorasan. One of the first established center for teaching the Babi faith, it was called Babiyeh, and it's in the Dawnbreakers, was established in Khorasan. And some of the earliest disciples of the Bab, as well as great, disciples of Baha'u'llah, were from Khorasan, and we'll talk about that just briefly. But let's read the passage in which Baha'u'llah addressing the ancient Persian region of Khorasan. Baha'u'llah said, Ya ardakha نسمع فيك صوت الرجال في ذكر ربك الغني المتعال. So here the word رجال and متعال basically rhyme. So يا أرتخا نسمع فيك صوت الرجال في ذكر ربك الغني المتعال. And its translation by the Baha'i World Center, included in the Kitab Aqdas: O land of Kha, we hear from thee the voice of heroes, raising in glorification of thy Lord, the all-possessing, the most exalted. Now, I want to take a moment to single out one hero in the ministry of Baha'u'llah, and the ministry of the Bab, excuse me, for sure, was Mullah Muqaddas Khurasani. He was one of the, after the Letters of the Living, he was probably one of the first after the Letters of the Living who became a believer in the Bab. And he's the one who went to the top of the minaret and changed the azan, the call to prayer, and then was pulled down and was severely punished and persecuted. And along with Qudus and another Babi, they were driven out of Shiraz. Mullah Sadiq, his name was Mullah Sadiq, Mullah Sadiq Muqaddas Khurasani, and Baha'u'llah gave him the title Ismullah al-Astaq, the name of God, the most truthful. And if you get your hands on a copy of this magnificent book by Mr. Balyuzi, Hassan Balyuzi, The Hand of the Cause of God, Hassan Balyuzi, Eminent Baha'is in the Time of Baha'u'llah, which is essentially a companion volume or a sequel to Baha'u'llah, King of Glory. The very first chapter, very lengthy chapter of the book, is dedicated to this man from Khurasan, this great apostle of Baha'u'llah. His son also was a very prominent Baha'i, became a hand of the cause of God. He's known as Ibn Astaq, the son of the truthful. And Baha'u'llah has singled them out, the father and son, as martyrs, even though neither of them actually were physically martyred. But Baha'u'llah refers to his son, who he later appointed as the hand of the cause of God, Ibn Astaq. His name was Ali Muhammad. Mirza Ali Muhammad Khurasani, known as Ibn Astaq, the hand of the cause, who actually lived until the early years of the ministry of Shoghi Effendi in the early 1920s. And then he passed away, but he was a devoted servant of Baha'u'llah, devoted servant of Abdul Baha, and was also very devoted to Shoghi Effendi for that brief period where he, at the latter part of his years. Baha'u'llah singles them out as Shahid ibn Shahid, both of them martyrs. So he refers to Ibn Astaq as Shahid ibn Shahid, martyr, son of martyr. And but the story of these two, particularly the father, is in the annals of Baha'i history. He is truly one of the great heroes of the faith. Truly, without a shadow of a doubt. So when Baha'u'llah says, O land of Kha, we hear from thee the voice of heroes, raised in glorification of thy Lord, the all-possessing, the most exalted. I will just tell you one more thing about these two, father and son. They were also cast in the Siyah Chal. They were cast in the Siyah Chal, not around the same time as Baha'u'llah, but later years. They were arrested. Ismullah al-Astaq was this great teacher of the faith, and he was such a charismatic individual. He was one of the students of Sheikh Kazim Rashdi. So he was a colleague of Mullah Hussein and the Letters of the Living. And but anyways, he was arrested. He was arrested on many occasions, and then I think eventually he passed away soon after a imprisonment that was in the latter years of his life. But they were in prison, father and son, in the Siah Chal, and not for 1 month, 2 months, 4 months, for a year or two, which is unbelievable. And during this period, the young, Ali Muhammad, whom Mullah Sadiq had named after the Bab, almost died. So the hand of the cause of God, Ibn Astaq, almost died as a young boy in Siah Chal while he was in prison with his father. So they went through tremendous hardship, but yet they were pillars of strength, loyalty, and fortitude. And I cannot help but think of them when there is this apostrophe by Baha'u'llah in the Kitab Aqdas, so the land of Kha. We hear from thee the voice of heroes, raised in glorification of thy Lord, the all-possessing, the most exalted. Both from the Babi era as well as in 1873, the faithful followers of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah then continues. Blessed the day on which the banners of the divine names shall be upraised in the kingdom of creation in my name, the all glorious. On that day, the faithful shall rejoice in the victory of God, and the disbelievers shall lament. And I think that ends that apostrophe, and this is the end of the Baha'u'llah's proclamations in the Kitab Aqdas. So end of section 2, part 7. Now I'm going to stop sharing my my screen and then ask Dr. Stockman to join us if there's any questions we have.
I don't see any questions just yet. Thank you very much, Shahrokh, for that fascinating review of the contents of the Aqdas regarding places and other than specific people. So that's, I think, very interesting and valuable. I'm glad you pointed out that the Rhine being covered with gore probably refers not to the First World War, but to the Franco-Prussian War and the Second World War, since the First World War did not go near the Rhine, as far as I know.
Yes,
it was all to the west of the Rhine.
It's very interesting because you have to understand this prophecy was for 7 decades during the ministry of Abdul Baha. The friends were still waiting because some of Baha'u'llah's prophecies had come true, with the fall of Napoleon and so on. But this prophecy was 72 years later. I mean, it took probably 2 generations for it to become a reality, but it did. It did very clearly. Both of those came to pass. So that to me is truly. I mean, the revelation itself is so miraculous. We don't need any more proofs. But if someone actually needed a historical proof that Baha'u'llah was omniscient, that Baha'u'llah was truly the manifestation of God that could see the future, I mean, that one is unequivocal and unmistakable. So, the
city of Strasbourg, which is right on the Rhine, was very, very badly damaged in the Franco-Prussian War. Large portions of it were burned up in the bombardment by the Germans before they crossed. So that is what I'm particularly familiar with in the Franco-Prussian War.
Well, the Franco-Prussian War was basically ended 2 years before the revelation of the Kitab Aqdas. So it definitely, in my opinion, it was never. This was a reference of the future, because Baha'u'llah says we see the banks of the river Rhine covered with gore and the lamentation of Berlin, even though today it's in glory. So this for me definitely is clearly an indication of a future, not the past. you know, but yes, there were definitely battles fought, you know, and artillery was being used. But during the Second World War, the carpet bombing and, you know, the Battle of the Bulge and all these other great German battles that basically, you know, they were pounding, the Allies were absolutely pounding the Germans into submission. I mean, that's how they really, it was in the same way, it was a blitz, you know, and you know, it's really interesting. Baha'u'llah says the swords of retribution, and the word retribution is vengeance. You know, I mean, that's the meaning of it. So, and the Allies basically were taking revenge of what the Germans had done, you know, the first few years of the war. And I mean, it's very controversial what the Allies did to Germany, you know, especially what they did to Berlin. I mean, even though Hitler was in bunkers, I mean, they absolutely decimated. Yeah, they flattened, you know. I mean, it was nonstop carpet bombing. I mean, they were big American and British bombers that were just working like essentially 24/7, constantly bombing Germany, because that's what the Allies felt that they had to keep their foot on the gas and not let go, and to just bring Germany into submission, because Germany was trying to consolidate its forces around Berlin and all that, and they knew once they captured Berlin, it was over. And the Russians the Red Army was coming from the north. In fact, it was the Red Army that fought its way and arrived in Berlin first. And then it was around the time that Hitler committed suicide and in the bunker, and then his body was burned. So, but because the Red Army were looking for him, you know, and then the Allies, the British and the Americans arrived, you know, I think within a day or so of the Russians,
something
you know,
like that.
So
I was in Berlin in 1990 and saw pictures of the just ruined buildings, the skeletons of buildings that were left. And East Berlin, there were still bullet holes in a lot of buildings. You know, there was still chips in the brick from bullets. I was quite struck by that. It was really, really incredibly damaged. Regarding the land of Ta, so far that one hasn't been fulfilled.
As far as the rule of the people, the democracy, no, it's not. It's coming though. I think, and there is I think it's becoming evident that the people, whenever that happens, the people are not gonna go the monarchy route or any kind of, they want democracy, people, and they want it in its purest form. So you know, this is again Baha'u'llah in 1873 prophesizing that will you know, that there will be democracy in Iran, and Tehran being the capital. So and it will be a place, it's, you know, Baha'u'llah promises that it would be a place of peace and tranquility. I mean, that is just so wonderful and hopeful, because you know, there is a talk by Abdul Baha, or a letter that I read many years ago. It's a very famous, that one of the believers, Persian believers, had asked Abdul Baha about the future of Iran, and particularly Tehran, where Baha'u'llah says it's the place of joy and the center, where everything, you know, will be. And the fact that in recent years the House of Justice have made the standard, the time standard based on Tehran. I mean, that is in compliance with what Baha'u'llah had prophesied. I mean, Tehran is going to be the sort of the city that, you know, in future, that everyone will turn to, that will come for visit, that will be just this this metropolis, this great place that people will visit from all around the world, just because it's a place of Iran's heritage, as well as being the birthplace of Baha'u'llah. And
Yeah.
it's very interesting that there's some I don't know whether I should say this, but there are some locations in Iran in Tehran associated with Baha'u'llah that are still preserved,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
are kept historically, even by the government there. So there is, I can see that. It may not be in my lifetime, but I can certainly see the hope and the fact that the promise of peace and tranquility, I think, for the current residents, and particularly the Baha'is of Iran, who are so heavily persecuted. I think this is like a breath of fresh air to hear that in
Yeah.
future, their generation, their kids, and the future generations will have that peace and tranquility that was denied for so long, for almost 200 years. The people of that land, the Baha'is of that land. So, but yeah, I'm very hopeful that it will happen. Hopefully sooner than.
There's a question that relates to this, which I wish I had noticed before I brought up the Land of Talk question. Dr. Monjazeb, thank you for a truly enlightening, fascinating course. Did the disobedience of the world's leaders of Baha'u'llah's proclamation result in the great unraveling in World War I? In the previous course, you said that Baha'u'llah's proclamation holds true today. My final question, did the great unraveling begin in World War I, end, or does it continue until Persia becomes a democracy?
That's a very, very good question. Thank you for that question. I was going to kind of sum up this, and I will take this moment to do that. Essentially, the 7 years that we've been holding these courses, and yes, Baha'u'llah's warning when it came in 1866, his seminal proclamation in that momentous 50-page epistle to the kings, it set a new precedent for European history, and I'm hoping that in future, when I write a book, if I do, God willing, I will focus on the political consequences and what happened for the second half of the 19th century, which now all historians and academics believe that it's the genesis of the Great War was as a result of the arms race that began, which Baha'u'llah alludes to in Suratul Muluk, and later in individual letters to the kings and rulers, regarding Germany, France, Britain, all of these great powers trying to have one over each other, and it created this arms race and this ominous technological advancement in warfare that eventually led to this great catastrophic war, which was dubbed the Great War, the First World War, that it didn't even end, after that. I mean, it continued because it was not done, and it continued in the Second World War, which was even more intenser. And the world has never been the same. And there was then the Cold War, but there was still a war. So we've been this war has continued. So I believe that until the vision of Baha'u'llah, the unification vision of Baha'u'llah, the true globalization. I mean, we have certainly moved in that direction, but we're not there. I mean, look at right now the war in Ukraine. Look at the polarization. Still, we're still in the grips of it. Sadly to say, and these are all because the political leaders have failed to heed God's admonishment, God's direction, God's will and purpose for humanity. Baha'u'llah, and I want to underscore this, is that because many people say, well, was there a response to Baha'u'llah's in proclamation? The fact that whether it was or not, I think ultimately is immaterial, because God chose to proclaim it. Whether the world listened or not, that is the world's problem. You know, and two things I want to bring up in closing this statement about the fact that it is continuing, is that, you know, the title of Shoghi Effendi's great book, he only wrote one book, and that's God Passes By. And just if we just, you know, reflect on that, those three words, God passes by. Baha'u'llah came, he proclaimed, and he passed on. And yet today, only 0.1% of the world population has embraced his vision. Truly. I mean, and that is really sad and frightening, that that majority, literally 99.9% of the world population still are heedless of Baha'u'llah's message. And I think I want to end this with this two passages from the Hidden Words, where Baha'u'llah, in the Persian Hidden Word number 28 and number 30, where he says to humanity, "O essence of desire, at many a dawn have I turned from the realms of the placeless unto thine abode, and found thee on the bed of ease, busied with others than myself. Whereupon, even as the flash of the spirit, I return to the realms of celestial glory, and breathe it not in my retreats above unto the hosts of holiness." And then he continues in number 30, he says, "O bond slave of the world, many a dawn hath the breezes of my loving kindness wafted over thee, and found thee upon the bed of heedlessness fast asleep. Bewailing then thy plight, it return whence it came." And I think this is more echoed in more detail in this great proclamation. I mean, you know, there's an excerpt that Shoghi Effendi has translated from a tablet of Baha'u'llah at the beginning of the section on Baha'u'llah, where Baha'u'llah says, the message has been so clear and so explicit and so numerous. There is absolutely no excuse for anyone on this planet to say that, you know, we didn't know, or we didn't, you know, or we, you know, he says there's absolutely no excuse for humanity, you know, to have ignored God's message. And I think these proclamations, that's why they're so important. That's why Baha'u'llah has chosen to include it in his book of laws, in his book of, you know, his most holy book, is that these proclamations were very serious and changed the course of humanity's history, and they still continue to impact it, but you know, humanity has chosen to ignore it by and large. And I think that's the sad irony of all this, you know, that it still continues, even though those monarchs, I mean, you look at the monarchies, they're all gone. The names of it, people don't even know it. There's a Napoleon III. I mean, czars, I mean, the new generation hardly know. Even the monarchy in UK has been mired in great controversy. I mean, still around, but it's the shadow of its former self. I mean, it's really not that relevant. There are many people within United Kingdom that want it to be abolished altogether. So monarchy has lost its true luster, true its position. Even though Baha'u'llah says God likes monarchy, and a combination of monarchy, as he says, and republicanism. He says, he likes the sort of the constitutional monarchy that Britain has it, but in a functional way, not a dysfunctional way. So we still, I mean, the vision is out there. Baha'u'llah has said, God has set that vision, but humanity just keeps ignoring it, keeps doing it its own way, and it brings so much misery, and that's why we are in misery still. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of thank you for that question. I think that question really did was a summation of everything that I have shared with you over the last 7 years.
Yeah. Well, that's a good comment and sort of a good end. One person asks here, when are you giving your next course? And we don't yet have that plan, so we'll have to get back to people when that happens. You've got a book to write from the sound of things. So
that's right. We're working on a book on the gleanings, that's sources of the gleanings, and so I will. And then there's a few projects at the World Center that I'm also have been recently invited to take part in. So right now it's been an incredible experience. Being at the Wilmette Institute and having the privilege and the honor of being able to present. And again, I want to thank you, Robert. You've been a great instrument. I think that all the students and friends, including myself, were indebted to you because you were the catalyst for making all of these courses happen. And I am forever grateful to your efforts, and you've taken the time to be the moderator and the conductor of these courses, and I'm very I feel very privileged to have had that opportunity. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all the other students. So that's the legacy of this through your efforts and many more. I'm just only speaking for myself, but there are so many other things that you have done as the executive director of the Wilmette Institute for over 20 plus years. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, and it's been a real privilege to be able to work with you in this fashion and to organize these courses and to get all of your understandings captured in videotape for the future generations to listen to. I'm sure people will be watching these tapes for many years and benefiting from them. And it has been quite a real privilege to be able to do these things. And so thank you very much for that. And I guess we are pretty much finished with this particular course, this particular class and this particular course. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, for participating in this course, and for everybody who will be watching this in the future for enjoying. I hope you all will enjoy these presentations, and I hope they will give you some inspiration and some new understanding of Baha'u'llah and his incredible proclamation to the world. So thank you again, Shahrokh. Stay warm up in chilly British Columbia, snowy British Columbia, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon. So bye-bye.
Yeah.